Right. We are right at 10 o'clock. A few more people are joining, so we'll admit as we get started. I just want to make sure our recording has started. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Rita Bird, the president of ISM Houston. I'm glad you've joined us today for our virtual session, Beyond the Pilot, Building a Procurement Function that runs on AI. Whether you're a member of ISM or joining us for the first time, thank you for spending part of your day with us. ISM Houston's mission is to learn, network, and grow supply management professionals through quality programming, networking, and professional development opportunities. I encourage you to visit our website and follow us on LinkedIn to stay informed about upcoming events and the benefits of being part of the ISM community. Here you will see what the website looks like. You can click on events for dates and locations. Our next two events are highlighted here. August 4th, coming up soon. We have a summer social at Top Golf in Katy. It's just in 2 weeks, so make sure you're registered now. Space is limited. We hope to see you there. Our new program year will kick off on Tuesday, September 8th, with a professional development meeting featuring women in supply management and logistics, and will be held at the Norris Conference Center. I'd like to thank Zycus for sponsoring today's virtual session and partnering with ISM Houston to bring this important conversation to our procurement community. Oops, sorry. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. Please remain muted and off video during the presentation. Feel free to submit questions in the chat throughout the session. We'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded, and the speaker contact information will be provided after the session. Our panelists, our first panelist I'd like to introduce is Peter Dill with the board of ISM Houston, serving as our program director. Peter brings a practitioner perspective with extensive experience helping procurement organizations navigate transformation, develop talent, and prepare professionals for the future of supply management. Our discussion will be moderated by Shristi Paul, solutions consultant at Zycus. Shristi works closely with organizations implementing AI-powered procurement solutions and will guide today's conversation. She'll also introduce our speaker, Saquib Jawed, Director of Procurement Management at Zycus. We will have a couple of live polls throughout the session, so I encourage everyone to participate and make this an interactive discussion. With that, thank you again for joining us. And Shristi, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Saquib and get us started.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I'll quickly introduce Saquib Jawed. He is the product and technology view for today's session. He is the director of product management at Zycus. So he drives AI-first product strategy across the portfolio with over 15 years of experience with AI products. So he spends his time, turning those complex technology into things that procurement teams can actually use. I am a solutions consultant. I discuss solution strategy, I give product demonstrations, I embed AI in business use cases. We have a very interesting session prepared today where we will be having an open-ended discussion. We already know that Peter Dill and Saquib Jawed both bring in very interesting and different approaches. It would be amazing to see the different approaches they bring in. So I'm going to kickstart the session. And I'm going to start off by setting the context, right? Before we go deeper, it's very important to get the vocabulary right, which is why for anyone newer to this, in simple terms, Saquib, I'm going to start off with you. I'm going to ask you, what do you feel is the difference between a chatbot, co-pilot, an AI agent, and an agentic workflow? Where does each one realistically show up in a procurement team's world? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Firstly, thanks, Srishti, for the introduction and welcome everyone on the podcast, on this webinar. Coming to the question quickly, there are various aspects of AI that we speak about, chatbots. We have got co-pilots, AI agents, and workflows, and so on. These basically represent various maturity ladder where the AI is taking us. Let's start with chatbot. very simple ChatGPT or a Claude where you just go and ask questions. Probably has your organization some data available or a general knowledge that is there, and you just ask, "What is my travel policy?" or "How can I buy a laptop?" etc. etc. And it gives you a response. So there's a question and there's a response that comes out of it. The co-pilot moves a step forward where instead of just responding, it also assists you with your work. Example, if you say, I want to create an RFP, it will look into your policies, it will see what all things can be done, and it will give you a draft of the RFP, the questions that can be there. But still, it remains primarily driven by you. Third part, where the things start getting interesting, is the AI agent. Uh, you no longer keep asking AI to help complete a task. You actually define an objective. And say, example, I want to buy a laptop, right? And the agent determines what information is required, what is missing, what is available, the follow-up questions. Based on those, finds out preferred suppliers, checks compliances, all of those things, and comes up with a result. So that's what an AI agent does. And eventually, the next evolution is the agentic workflows. And probably that's where the entire procurement is headed right now. It's basically a group of AI agents working in tandem where there's an orchestrator who defines and tells which AI agent should do what, and they go and pursue and they complete that particular task out there. So these are all the things that joins together and works as the world of AI today.
Makes sense. Very well put together. And now that we have that sort of vocabulary and that foundation in place, it would be also great to understand one phrase that is constantly used within the procurement world is run on AI. So, for a procurement team, what would that phrase exactly mean? Once again, how is that different from AI tools that you talked about or that are out there that many of us already use day by day?
I think this is one of the most defining questions of our industry right now. Today, when we say talk about using AI, they basically refer to isolated interactions. I go and ask some questions on maybe a ChatGPT or a Claude to summarize a document, draft me an email, and so on. AI behaves like an application which is primarily bolted on that you choose to use. But running on AI is fundamentally absolutely different. AI stops being an application and becomes a part of your operating model. It becomes a part of a fabric that you use on a daily basis. Think about how procurement works today. Every process begins with someone noticing something and taking an action on it. Someone submits a request, someone reviews it, someone routes it, someone approves it, and so on. The entire modus operandi of the current model was based or centered around human. AI changes that dynamic. Instead of waiting for people to initiate every activity, AI continuously observes what is happening across procurement, proactively advances the work, it recognizes what is happening. So, example, if there's a contract which is nearing renewal, it will figure it out that, okay, there's something that is up for renewal. It will identify the various patterns that is around that. It will give you suggestions and will come back and say that, okay, these are the things that can be done. And as per the company policy, you can also define the agent to go and negotiate it on behalf of you and come back with the results. And obviously, this doesn't mean that we remove the human out of the loop, but human are included where you actually need their input, where the decisions are required. Rest of the grunt activity is actually done by the entire agentic workflows and AI agents. So that's what running on AI is. Again, just to put it very boldly, the human in the loop always exists, but they are more strategic in nature instead of being transactional. So yeah, that's what running on AI is.
Yeah, I want to add something in here a little bit, and we'll dive deeper into AI. Most of us can remember 15, 20 plus years ago when we all were talking about another topic, which was let's go global, right? So you may say, what does that have to do with AI? Well, it's a similar concept. Sometimes people thought go global meant, well, we have a customer outside our own country, or we have some employees outside our own company. That wasn't really global. What global meant was let's make sure that we're thinking about things from all these different perspectives. So it's interwoven in our culture. So we're taking advantage of all the different aspects of something like this. So we'll get into this further, but it's a similar concept of diving in and making sure it's intertwined with everything we do.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the tangible scenarios and examples that were also brought into this discussion. What I want to do is I want to make this interactive for the audience. I want you to think of these scenarios like requesting, like contracting, and there's going to be a poll that pops up on your screen. Different organizations are in different stages within, procurement, whether and that also sort of defines what your appetite for AI is. So I'm gonna give it a few seconds for the poll to pop up, wherein we're going to see where within procurement and where is your procurement team currently standing on its AI journey. That is also how we sort of try to mold our journey. A lot of people are on their initial stages where they're just exploring and they're trying to, sort of get into the nitty gritty details, trying to understand where they stand. A lot of people are already have a head start into their AI journey. Many of us already use AI in our tasks, so would love to get a gauge of the audience today, what that looks like, where we're standing, and maybe in our minds, we could also create a compare and contrast as we move through today's session as to where we are, where we want to be. So, folks, I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Let's put in our responses, let's put in submit, and then we can see what the poll results are. So, feel
And
free to hit your. Mhm.
just to remind everybody, the poll is completely anonymous, so don't feel shy about just answering what first comes to mind.
Absolutely. So I think in a few seconds, we can also close up the polls and see the results, maybe see where the audience stands today. Perfect. So I, I I I see that the poll results have popped in. There are a lot of people as a part of today's session who are using AI in their day-to-day tasks. There are 36% people who are also exploring. Some of us are actually running a pilot. Some of us are using it as a part of our core process. I'm going to continue with the discussion that we have going, and we can continue to leverage our current stage within AI and also where this discussion is going. What I want to talk about is next is where AI often stalls, right? Peter, would love to hear your thoughts because a lot of us have seen an AI tool get piloted, work well in a demo, and then it quietly sorts of starts to fade. Is this an adoption problem or is this a knowledge gap? Do you feel it's a failure of the tool itself? What are your thoughts here?
Couple different things. So when you think about this, you know, it's not a surprise. People are busy, right? I know a lot of times when I'll just speak for myself as a practitioner. I mean, senior manager, director level, people are busy, right? They put out, the IT team, whoever's taking charge of that in your organization, even if it's an outside provider, going to put together some training, maybe have a few different sessions to make it easier. But people are busy, right? I can tell you, I'll raise my hand that I've been multitasking in many cases when I'm taking that training on any new tool, whether it's AI or whatever tool it is. And maybe I'll absorb, maybe not, 80, 90% of it, I'll absorb 20 or 30%. Maybe I don't even get on the training I've scheduled myself for at all because I got a new project or those type of things. So that's not necessarily failure or bad or those kind of things. But and let's also realize what's happening in many industries and sectors around the world today. What's happening? The workforce is shrinking because of AI, because of other factors. So we have a smaller number of people doing the same thing. So when someone has a choice between taking this training, which they know they need to take, they're either not taking it or looking at it in a different way. I mean, I was recently blessed to be able to take a course through Rice University. It was a month-long course. It was live. It was 2 sessions a week, an hour and a half, and there was homework. So we had several people from across different organizations say, look, I'm on here. I'm going to listen to this, but I don't have time to get into it, do the practice and learn how to do agents and those kind of things. So That's an example of exactly what we're talking about. So I don't necessarily think it's an adoption or a knowledge gap or failure of the tool itself. I just think, people are busy. And I think the important thing about that is the organization or the company that organizations are bringing in need to think about that and look at ways where they can still project and inject value into the organization, because we all know at every company right now, all senior leadership is understandably saying, use this tool. We're providing the training. The expectation is there. I know my most recent company, they were putting goals on people's annual review and quarterly review of what are you doing on AI? Bring a project forward. Check those boxes to make sure it's actually happening. And I've got some ideas we'll discuss later about how to do that most effectively at a management level, at an individual level, and even at a larger corporation level.
Absolutely. And Peter, I do want to build on that. So that is why I also want to ask, for someone who is working within a procurement team today, what does a successful scaled use of AI actually look like versus, the pilot that you talked about that can fizzle? So again, you provide great examples. If you could help us
Sure.
with another example there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen, I mean, let's look across, in the past of all of our organizations from a practitioner standpoint. Somebody, or the organization decides they're going to bring a new tool in, or this new software, or whatever else it is. That and they spent some money on it. They spent some time. They're investing in it to make the organization better, to deliver to the bottom line. Let's talk about, we're all in procurement, purchasing, supply chain, whatever you want to call it. Our goal is to deliver either hard dollar savings or efficiency or process improvement in our goals, whether it's a sourcing exercise or operational perspective or those sorts of things. So you have a lot of times, most of the time, you have a CFO sitting on the other side of this saying, I've just invested a few $1 million, if not a few thousand, more or less, in this program. So I want to see results. I want to see results inside the organization. I want the organization or the company, the outsourced company that said I can deliver this much savings. I want you guys to help produce. So a few ideas I've seen successful both with AI and other programs. Start small. Do pilots, and we all know that that's probably where most people would have gone to. But think about this. Focus on, I'm going to call it a semi-SME in each small team. So think of a manager leading a team of 4 to 8 people, or whatever you want to call it, whatever works in your group, however your organization, whether it's flat or a little bit more diverse there. Pick someone in that team who's already, inclined to engage, has a positive personality, and also someone who typically has a little bit more of an IT or SME or focus in that area. Dub that person, that I'm going to call them the semi-SME. Make sure that they're focused and actually will take the training. And then as they permeate the organization and they absorb this, then they can be the one that everyone, what happens? Everyone's sitting in their cube and someone says, I don't know how to do this. How can I apply AI? What do? They lean back in their chair, they turn their head over here and say, hey, Mary, Larry, whoever it is, could you come over and show me something here? Or maybe in the team meeting, they say, here's an idea. Here's something that Joe or Larry or Harry did this week that we can all benefit from. And then I would go a step further. I would have those semi-SMEs, let's say, have their own set of meetings once a month or once a week to say what's working over in tactical procurement, what's working in ops, what's working over in supplier quality. Where have we done some of these things? Where are some successes? And oh, by the way, where are some failures? Where are some things that aren't going well? So let's get those out on the table. So those are kind of things, the way I typically look at situations, like my first book, Control What You Can. Let's engage here. Let's do what we can to make this work. Understand where it's not, and talk about what it takes. Sometimes that's going to be kicking back upstairs and saying, hey, leadership, this tool isn't doing what we thought. Or, hey, outsourced company, this isn't working. We need some advice from you. What have you learned? What stumbling blocks have you experienced with other implementations? And what have you done that could maybe help move this thing along? So there's some thoughts. Hopefully that's useful.
Absolutely. And another thing that I myself have seen across a lot of conversations is that when it comes to blockers, a lot of apprehension is around technology, integrations, data, ERP. So is that really what the barrier is today, or do you feel there's something else contributing to that blocker?
Well, let me comment a little bit, then I want to bring in Saquib because I'm sure he's got some thoughts too. Um,
Lovely.
Again, a lot of times people will point directly to the technology. I mean, a long time ago when I was, or not so long ago when I was at a logistics company doing ocean freight, I wanted a transportation management system. And it wasn't that just that I wanted, all the arrows were pointing, other companies had those things. And we got a lot of pushback saying we don't need that. We got heroes here who can find the information if you give them a couple of days versus, well, if you have this system in place, it's data driven decisions and it's not, we need heroes who are firefighters and reactive, heroes. Those are good to have. But if we have this system in place, we could focus on data driven decisions and improving value and delivering value. So that's a lot of time where people go, this is a problem with the system or this outsourced company isn't any good. But those are the real barriers. Or sometimes you look at change management. What do you typically have in any change management, whether it's a system or something else or a merger or whatever else? 30% get it, want to do it, and are all on board. They're hungry. They want to learn. And I'm not talking age difference. This could be age, any generation. It really change. It's really any group. 30% need training. They need retraining. I'm the kind of guy that needs to see it a couple different times before I can absorb it, practice it, put it in place. And then there's that 30%, unfortunately, that aren't going to get it and they're going to resist, right? Because they've been here at the company for so long or whatever their issue is. And they're saying, I'm just going to stick to this. I'm going to hold on to the bitter end. And those kind of that group's going to have to be addressed directly and pushed, or perhaps maybe some tough decisions made there. So, those are my thoughts. I keep coming back to control what you can, make those decisions that you can do, give everybody a chance, train, retrain, ask them where they need help. So, Saquib, what do you think?
I actually agree with you. If this question would have come 2 to 3 years back to me, probably my response would have been different. AI models were less capable, enterprising tools were immature, less harnessing or absolutely no harness available, and integrating the AI models within the business process was genuinely difficult. But today, that's no more a primary constraint. Most enterprises already have access to remarkably capable AI technologies. Foundation models have advanced rapidly, and they will keep on improving over a period of time. Cloud infrastructures have improved, your enterprise platforms have improved as well. So the question is no longer around, can AI do this? The real question is, how do we redesign our processes and policies that will enable the AI to get this thing done? So the problem is no more technology, or probably is the second problem out there, could be. But the bigger problem is organizational challenge. So every uh, every procurement processes were designed with one assumption that humans execute every step, be it approval chains, exception handling, segregation of duties, your sourcing workflows, everything, right? All of it assumes a person is driving the process. But once AI starts performing those tasks, your entire modus operandi changes. The operating model itself evolves to the next level. That means governance becomes very important as your algorithms. Organizations need clear policies around what AI can do and what it can't do, or where you need to bring in a human for an approval. What kind of recommendations can I give, and should I get the explanations? The kind of decisions, can we audit them or not? All of those questions starts coming in. And the most fundamental thing is the trust part. So even if AI is giving you a very high accurate response, it will be very helpful for a person to know how did it reach to that conclusion. So this entire set, maybe governance or trust, changes how we actually function and move towards the system. So in my view, technology is increasingly becoming the easy part. The harder and more important challenge is redesigning the entire procurement around a fundamentally new way of working. So that's the entire operating model transformation rather than just a technology switch.
Yeah, the other thing, a couple of things, I really like what you said. The other thing I want to add in here is with previous systems, there was an element or a time frame of what I'm used to calling hypercare, right? Whether you're implementing a new software, you want to make sure that the outsourced group, perhaps Zycus or others, has that hypercare. Say, okay, for the next 3 weeks or first 2 months, we're going to have somebody there to answer questions all the time. We don't want to be waiting, because when people get frustrated, they're going to switch off and say, this thing doesn't work, or my version of whatever doesn't work. I think you're right. I think there's less cases where that's the reality, especially with AI. And I like what I think you were heading towards, but I'll just bring out one of the elephants in the room: security, right? So there's a lot of people that early adopters want to get in there and use and say, I want to do this, this, this. I think, like you said about governance, typically it's IT needs to be in there and enable. We had a great conversation at a chief data officer conference I was at the other day, and even in this RICE course, where you don't want IT to be the one holding people back, to say, no, we're not doing that, or we're only going to give, special licenses to 10% of the population. Maybe that's a good place to start, and then you need to roll it out as people understand. But you need to be, instead of AI saying, or excuse me, IT saying, you can't do that, that's against our policy, that'll put us at risk. Maybe you have a smaller team in combination with the outsourced group to say, let's figure out how we can do that, because we want to be on the cutting edge. We want to do things faster. We need to compete. But that's another way to think about it, because all too often right now we have IT and other groups pushing back, saying, putting too much restraints on it. The other thing I'll say before I forget is, when you look at a solution, we'll talk about this some more, getting down into the meat of this. A great way to look at a solution that AI puts out for you, especially if it's something complex, is look at it as instead of the answer, look at it as a proposal. Just like if you had the best intern in the world, Harvard, MIT, whatever your favorite school is, you wouldn't take the answer for them and take it straight to the CEO or CFO or chief procurement officer. You'd say, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Let's kick it around. Let's challenge it. Let's see where the holes are. A great way to do that, certainly with Claude and some of these other tools, are get the argument, lay it out, the solution, the proposal, and then ask Claude, ask Gemini, ask Copilot, okay, now make the best argument against what you just said, and it'll do it. And then you can find some ways and look at those things. And then when you have that proposal, look at something and say, hey, I'm going to take that proposal back to the leaders of these different functions, and let's kick it around. Let's challenge it before we take it up to the boss, or certainly let's put it through some stage gates before we implement. Anyway, I'm probably getting ahead of us, but those thoughts just popped into my mind.
No, absolutely. Very interesting. Team, this is also where I want to segment around a couple of more terms that I want to discuss. Saquib, would love to hear your thoughts here. What is your approach into the difference between automation and autonomy? Where does one stop? Where does the other begin? Would love to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. So, very interesting, actually. I was having a chat today over a coffee with engineering leader and a sales leader out here in the organization, and we were talking about autonomous AP. How can we, though we brought out the word automate, but how do we make the entire AP process autonomous? And one of the feedback that came in was that, say, example, if we set up a set of rules which says that if my supplier is XYZ and is a trusted vendor and the invoice value is less than so and so amount, just go ahead and process it. And if all my mandatory fields are filled, just go ahead and process it. That's also a form of autonomous AP, but it's basically automation where we have written predefined rules and it executes based on those rules. That is automation. When we say autonomy, the same scenario, though we already have the rules, it will also check, okay, I have got all the details, but is my confidence across the entire invoice above the mark? Probably yes, probably no. We don't know that. So similarly, it will check for any other anomalies. It will check for any fraud cases. It would understand the supplier invoicing patterns, compliance checks, a lot of those things, and then make a decision in itself saying that, okay, now it qualifies to be processed autonomously without anyone's involvement. Or in cases where it doesn't succeed, it will pass it on to a human. It will tag that particular human and say that, okay, this is where you want to go and check it. So that's an autonomous system where the AI itself takes a decision within defined guardrails and policies, what it can do next and what can be executed till the end mile. While we're discussing this thing, this doesn't mean unrestricted decision making in terms of autonomous. Right? Enterprise AI should never operate without governance. Just repeating what we mentioned earlier. Probably at level 1, AI recommends and human decides. That's what Peter was mentioning earlier, that it goes in a progressive and in a series aspect. At level two, AI starts executing some very low risk activities independently, but obviously escalates the exceptions. And probably your level three would be AI coordinates across multiple processes, multiple teams, and humans focus on strategy negotiations and only come in the system when there is a major exception that's happening. But that's where we see as a difference between what an autonomous system would look like, and automation is something that already exists in the market today.
Yeah, that's a great compare and contrast, which is also why, Peter, I want you to bring in, your practitioner's view here. Could you maybe walk us through an ideal day for either a buyer or a category manager once AI is a part of the workflow? So, what would happen to the tasks? What would change? What disappears? What stays human? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think few different things. When I think about what would change, spending hours, doing things like, creating PowerPoints from scratch, right? So, where's the template? What was the last thing we said here? Putting together a bunch of, paper or other notes, or even notes for a bunch of emails. Those things, the first draft of those things, certain emails, I'm not going to say all emails because I know I've got my various email tools right now will say, hey, I'll just write the whole email for you. I don't know if I'm necessarily a fan of that, but you could look over some of those things and say, hey, here's a good place to start an email, because otherwise, you start to not communicate with each other and say, well, that's a pretty good email I just got from Shristi, who maybe wrote some of it, maybe didn't write any of it. So those sorts of things will should change. When I think of what should disappear, I think about things like, well, combing through emails and your calendar to say, well, okay, this calendar invite was for this meeting. What emails do I need to answer before I check in with the boss? I know I've in the past I've done that before. I didn't want to see my boss till I've read all my emails, because he may have said, what are you doing in here? Haven't you read your emails today? I told you that yesterday. So you can certainly create agents to do that. That's certainly one thing we learned in our class, is a practice over at Rice, to say, hey, you can create the same thing. Those of you who watched an Avengers movie, seen Iron Man's Jarvis, to do those sorts of things, sort of a personal agent who can do a lot of those things for you. You need to be careful, of course. So I think those kind of things can disappear, or certainly maybe go away. When I think about what stays human, the R word comes in. We think about a RASIC chart. Responsibility, right? So when we think about this new world we're heading towards, some companies are already in this world, where we will always have org charts in our companies, but we may have responsibility charts. What do I mean by that? Responsibility chart is where AI can do a lot of these things. We can automate and create those agents and do those sorts of things, but the responsibility will still lie with, say, myself, to make sure from a commercial standpoint the contract is sound. Can I and should I use AI to review a contract where there's some weakness and opportunity for commercial aspects? Yes. Are my legal brothers and sisters inside my own company doing the same thing with legal contracts for liability and exposure and protecting the company? Yes. But when I sign off from a commercial standpoint, I'm literally, well, maybe not literally, but I'm pricking my finger figuratively and signing in blood, saying, my name's on that contract. I'm going to click a button in whatever approval system and say, Peter Dill approved that contract. Same on the legal side. From a liability and all those things they're responsible for, they're going to do the same thing. So that responsibility will always be there, and always should be there. And think about that from a procurement, from a legal, from an approval standpoint. Those things should and always be there. So those things, I don't think those things will change. And that's what stays human. So those are my sort of high level thoughts on that.
Completely agree, and completely agree on creating that balance, which is also why I want to build on that. And Saqib, I want to know about your experience with your customers, on how have you seen AI transform the day-to-day routine for a procurement practitioner?
Totally. So, one observation has been remarkably constant across the customers we have worked with. AI doesn't replace procurement work. It basically changes the nature of procurement work, right? Traditionally, procurement professionals spend full lot of time spending their day searching for information, chasing approvals, responding to stakeholders, consolidating supplier response, and so on. There are so many of these tasks, right? None of these activities actually create any strategic value. What AI does is, number one, it compresses its administrative overheads immediately. Example, right? We have seen sourcing teams reduce the time spent preparing an RFP because AI generates a strong first draft based on historical events and category knowledge, right? We have seen procurement teams compare supplier proposals in minutes instead of hours because AI summarizes those commercial differences and highlights the key risks. Contract terms are reviewing, teams are reviewing hundreds of pages faster because AI identifies non-standard clauses, highlights the risk, sort of redlining, etc. So all of these things is where we have seen a lot of very quick adoption of AI, and people are getting a knack of how all of these things combined together in a single agentic workflow can produce a lot more value other than doing siloed activities through their AI agents. That's a very common observation.
Absolutely. Just to add a small nugget, another thing that I've seen see AI add in terms of transformation is confidence, because that's also something that AI brings into the blend in terms of removing guesswork. We have seen in so many sourcing processes where it brings in market intelligence. So within sourcing, within contracting, it's also a confidence that procurement teams can move forward with. Lastly, next what I want to look at is, from this responsibility and planning perspective, when AI makes a wrong call, let's say a bad supplier match, a misrouted request, uh, who's expected to catch it? What should the team sort of have in place to get it corrected very quickly?
I can jump in there, and I want to take it even a step back from what you said. Again, I was at a recent chief data officer meeting where, quite frankly, these people are a little bit above my head, but we jumped in, had some great discussions, and one of the comments I really liked, it was more common sense, but what I really liked was one of the senior leadership started to close the conference by saying this: since all of our organizations and leadership are expecting us and encouraging us to use AI, make sure that you are letting people know that that's exactly what you did when you developed this solution. Why hide it? You shouldn't hide it. So you should say, hey, here's what I recommend. Yeah, I certainly used AI. And like you said about the confidence, so that's great. And that way that's out on the table. So for some reason, stuff happens. We should have that human in the loop, and there's a mistake. Then that should not be the time where I or anybody else says, oh, that's because I used AI. I meant to tell you. That shouldn't be happening. So let's just be honest. Those places where we want to work, we wanted to lead our teams and be good leaders of teams, whether you're a manager, director, or above, or even just an individual contributor. Say those things. Make sure you're injecting that into things, and then also talk about things like, we all know this, but I'll just include it in the conversation. Make sure you're looking at the sources, checking the sources, asking AI, where did you get that information? Because remember, when we talk about AI, what's it doing? It's looking for the most likely, most common answer. And sometimes that most common answer is incorrect. Or sometimes when AI does math, unless you put a formula in there, if the context is a 8-year-old math class, if you say what's 2 plus 2, it could answer 7, because in an 8-year-old math class, that may be a common mistake. So you may get that answer. It's a little bit of a silly example, but remember, AI, when you talk about tokens, when you talk about all sorts of other things, it's looking for the most likely response. So to get back to the question directly, who's expected to catch it is the human in the loop, obviously. And we talked about their responsibility and those sorts of things. But again, like I referred to earlier, you can use AI to assist that too. Ask it for the argument, the best argument against the proposal. Have those other subject matter experts or those in another shared service try and pick that argument apart. Why wouldn't that work? Why wouldn't it work from a logistics standpoint? Why wouldn't it work from a tariff standpoint? Remember, if you don't put the context in there, and that's another thing I'll add in here, before you even ask AI a question or ask it for a solution, ask it for its plan. This is very key. Ask it for its plan. How are you going to solve this problem? Don't solve it. Tell me how you're going to do it. Give me the 10 steps you're going to use. And then you can look at those steps and say, wait a minute, I didn't give it enough input. I didn't give it the clear requirements from chapter 1 from Control What You Can. If you're not giving AI the correct context, it may come up with a solution that doesn't make sense. So let me bring Saquib in here and see what he thinks.
Um, this is a question which I think everyone has in their mind and never talks out loud, right? Where the ownership lies. One thing that let me try to reframe the mental model around this question, right? The goal shouldn't be to build AI that never make mistakes. The goal is to build organizations that can safely manage those AI decisions. Humans make mistakes, traditional softwares make mistakes, AI will also make mistakes, right? The question is whether the organization has those checks and balances to detect, explain, and recover from those mistakes as soon as possible. So, accountability should always remain with the business, not with the technology. Technology can highlight it, but the business is responsible for it. So, four clear things that I can bring out on this topic. One thing is organizations should be able to define clear decision boundaries. AI should know exactly what it is allowed to do autonomously and what where humans' approval is mandatory. Just building it up on what Peter has mentioned. Second is explainability, right? While we're building those workflows, we definitely ask that okay, explain how we are going to do this thing. We improve those steps and we'll implement it. But as you see, when systems go on production and people start using it, AI can go wrong and probably it can hallucinate. So it should be able to explain why did they do that particular activity. Every recommendation, every action should have a trail behind it. So, and the explainability that comes along with it. Third is the auditability. So organizations need a complete record of what AI recommended, why it recommended it, and what decision was ultimately taken. This is not something that is just visible, but is also logged in the system. Taking to my fourth point, where the system should know how to continuously learn. So every correction made by procurement professionals should become a feedback loop that improves the future recommendations, future actions. So responsible AI isn't about eliminating humans. It's about ensuring humans intervene where they add the most value. So that's how we look into it. Yeah.
I like what you said about that because it really just you, intertwines AI like just another tool or even another person in a good way,
Yeah.
right? To say we're
Yeah.
we're, we're not going to expect it to have all the answers and beat it up or fire it once it makes mistakes. We don't or shouldn't do that with people. So why would we do that with a great tool?
Agreed. So folks, what I want to do next is I want to push the session forward and once again make it interactive. I'm going to ask. We're gonna see a poll to come up on our screen once again. The poll is going to be more regarding your experience and what you would want AI to take off of your plate. So I'm going to give it a few seconds. There it is. The poll has popped up. Now, these are four, concrete areas wherein we have intake, sourcing, contracting, invoicing. Um, but folks, I also want to say that if there are other areas, a lot of you may have more granular pain points, more use cases that you would want to discuss with us as well, where you would love for AI to step in and take a couple of things off your plate. We would love to discuss that with you, after the session as well. We will be sharing our information via email for us to have sessions, even if you're not looking to implement anything, just to explore. Just wanted to put that out there. I am going to allow all of you to put in your responses and hit submit. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. Would be great to see where the audience lies and get a bit of a gauge of, areas where people are, hoping to involve AI into the blend of their day-to-day work. So let's give it a few more seconds. So folks, I am going to ask you to start hitting submit. We can close off the polls and we can take a look at, what the responses are. So I believe the poll results will also come up in a few seconds. I I see that people want AI in almost all regions and segments within procurement. We see quite a healthy distribution across intake as well as sourcing within contracting, renewals, invoices. Um, so, team, I'm going to push the session forward. Let's talk a little more granularly. So, Saqib, I wanted to hear your thoughts. Let's get practical and follow a single request from intake all the way till invoicing. Each stage, where do you feel that AI does step in? What does it do there?
Okay. So rather than looking at AI as separate capabilities or disparate system across source to pay, and this comes from a product management and a technology geek in me, I think it's more useful to think about AI as creating a continuous intelligence layer across the entire process. So let's take a simple example, right? And one question that actually how at Zycus we started building intake, and that was the main question that we wanted to build our Zycus. We use it at a lot of examples. So one of the folks come and say that I want to buy a laptop. Right? The older systems, someone will have some forms that they will fill, they'll submit approvals and everything. But with this system, say example, within you're using Microsoft Teams. You just go and say that I want to buy a laptop. Intake, the main orchestrator comes in through intake. It says that, okay, the person is looking for a laptop. It goes and checks into their user management system, access management system, what roles accesses are allowed, what are the budget allocated to this person. Uh, then it also asks for a couple of more questions based on what is required to fulfill that demand. And then it recommends that, okay, these are the particular suppliers, these are the particular risks that are associated, and it suggests a purchasing part to it. Let's assume that the supply is there and is not there, and they want to open up a sourcing event. So AI recommends existing suppliers plus new suppliers out there, some preferred vendor programs, category strategies, etc. Where basically they just go and say that, okay, I won't like to go ahead with any of these suppliers, and it goes, selects, runs the entire sourcing event with them. And one of the most interesting use cases that we've seen, if the purchase is a tail spend, it actually can go and do an autonomous negotiation end to end. You actually don't need a human in loop to uh, do the entire negotiation. It's the final decisions that is supposed to be done where human comes in picture. So once the stages are passed, obviously the contracting would come in, your purchasing would come in, and finally, once the purchase is completed, your invoicing would come in, where the entire journey of intake would till has been taken care of. So it's taking the request, analyzing who is going to fulfill this request, whether it is permissible as per my account, as per my business policies out there. Do I have a contract? Do I don't have a contract? Do I need to get a contract created? A purchase order creation, automatically flipping it into receipts, flipping it into invoices and everything. And AI can take care of all these steps, including a human in the loop. Wherever it identifies there is some exception, there is some requirement of human, it will completely bring in a person in the loop to take the final decisions. But yeah, the entire process can be driven by the AI.
Completely agree with your approach. And Peter, would also love to hear your thoughts here for, a contract or category manager. Where can an AI genuinely help? Where should a human always sort of stay in the loop in such cases?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I love those examples, and I want to build on those as well. So think about the things that either you or people on your team or both, from a category manager or a senior manager, even a director and above level, what kind of things we need to come back to. One of my favorite phrases, I have a lot of favorite phrases are, is this task creating value at all? And then in some cases, is it destroying value? So what do I mean by that? So at one of my most recent companies, we had a running joke or frustration about IT tickets. Well, here's what you do. And we had a system, it was the best we had before some of the advantages of IT came along. How do you do this? Well, we've got this whole screen you can go onto and figure out which IT ticket you have to fill out, and on and on and on and on. And it was a whole process in itself. I liked his example of a laptop, but this could be, I need to set up a new system, or I need to get that laptop, or I need to get something fixed, or all those sorts of things. And the data scientist, a real smart individual who I worked with before, he helped set these things up, or was instrumental in some of it was IT, those kind of things. But when he moved on to his next company, he said, wow, they don't have IT tickets at this company. Why? Because it was basically a chat bot. What do you need? We'll get you where you need to go, just like Saquib was saying. Same thing with even, you can apply that to training, right? We had someone else in another group who said, we'd ask a question and they would respond by, we gave that training. You should know that by now. Go look up the training aid, right? And that was not a bad system. It was the best based on tools we had. So someone either had to go search for the training aid and spend a lot of time finding. Remember, we talked earlier in the call about I was only half paying attention when I did that training, and I wasn't even sure why we were doing it at the time because I didn't know I needed it. But think about a case, just like Saquib mentioned. Instead of saying go hunt down the training aid, I guess it could steer you directly to it. Or here's a news flash, it could just answer the question, how do I do this? Here's the 5 steps. Or let me walk you through them, let me do them for you. Because those type of things, the training aid, the IT ticket, those aren't value added. Do we need to do those things? Certainly. Do people need to be enabled? Certainly. But adding value is evaluating a sourcing event or setting up a sourcing event or adding those oversights and advantages. So those are the kind of things I would say. We think about like second book, perspectives with purpose. Which shared service is interacting effectively to create value? This is far beyond just communicating, purchasing with legal or purchasing with engineering or supplier quality. This is how are we working together so we can create value and align so we don't have senior leadership saying, why aren't you guys figuring it out together using the tools like AI that I've given you? Let's see what else. Those are my main comments there as far as where AI can help with those things in combination with what Saquib just said.
Absolutely. And Saquib, I'm gonna dig for another example there. So sourcing is also where a lot of the team's time goes, building RFPs, finding suppliers, comparing bids. So where does AI realistically help in that process today? And why does what still needs a buyer's judgment even within that?
At least, so sourcing is probably where we are also seeing some of the fastest adoption because it combines large volumes of both structured and unstructured data. AI is already very effective at preparing the first draft of RFPs, as you mentioned, recommending evaluation criteria, identifying potential suppliers, summarizing and evaluating supplier responses, and comparing pricing models, letting commercial risk, and so on, right? These are all activities that consume significant time, but probably are not, they don't require deep strategic judgment, right? Where humans continue to make the difference is in understanding the core business context. AI can tell you which supplier scored highest. It can't fully appreciate that you have, for example, 15 years of experience building a strategic partnership with another supplier who is co-investing in an innovation charter, something like that, right? AI can identify pricing differences. It can't replace the relationship building that happens during negotiations. AI can definitely summarize this, but I don't think it can determine your organization's appetite for that risk, right? So these are the places where still a buyer, a category manager, or a sourcing manager play vital roles, and those are some strategic things that will run long term. AI will definitely take care of your execution side of the things. So that's how AI is sending the sourcing very rapidly.
Absolutely, Saquib. And in terms of working alongside AI, I also wanted to ask you, how do teams build that trust in AI output without, blindly accepting or rechecking everything? In practice, what should an individual contributor know where AI is and isn't allowed to act?
So it's a very simple process, right? How do a person builds trust on another person is the exact way how a person builds trust on AI. Trust is earned, right? Trust is not configured. So a lot of organizations that we saw, at least during our initial conversations, always approached backward. They try to convince the employees to trust AI. Instead, AI should behave in ways that deserve trust, right? That means recommendations need to be transparent, explainable, and supported by evidence. People should know what they're getting into. If AI recommends a supplier, it should explain whether that recommendation is based on historical performance, pricing, market intelligence, sustainability scores, whatever metrics it finds out based on which it gave that recommendation. I keep coming back to the governance and the harness aspect of it. Employees shouldn't have to guess whether AI is allowed to approve something or not. Organizations should clearly define which activities AI can perform autonomously, which require human approval, and which should always remain human led in most of the cases. And finally, trust develops through experience. Most organizations shouldn't start by giving AI broad decision making authority. As Peter initially mentioned, that start small, focus on what can be achieved immediately, where slowly, steadily, progressively you build trust on the system. And as confidence grows, your appetite for autonomy increases. So trust is not like a switch that you just switch it off or switch it on, right? It's something organization built over time through consistent outcomes. And that's what organization should be focused on. So,
Absolutely. And now, next what I want to do is I want to give the audience a kickstart into how they themselves should also start and venture into AI, which is why I want to ask, what should a mid-level procurement professional start building or learning now to stay, valuable as more of the routine work sort of shifts to AI?
Yeah, I would jump in and say that a couple different things. Let's just address another elephant in the room. We've heard many of these type of talks. Is AI coming for my job, right? So the answer I would give, and like we've been talking about, is your job could have been taken over 5, 10, 15 years ago if you don't do one thing. What? Continuously learn, continuously adapt to different things. You've heard those examples of things like looking at AI. Is it terrible? Is it going to take over the world or whatever else? Well, think about the internet. Think about the typewriter. Think about the card catalog at the library, things that we use or don't use anymore because we have a new tool. So we've heard those conversations, but I would come back to being a continuous learner, because those are the kind of people we want on our teams. Those are the kind of team players we want to be, whether you're new to career, getting into procurement, getting into these functions, or whether you're a seasoned leader. One of the most respected bosses I had recently, right up till the day he retired, he was continuously learning. He knew the systems. He was up on technology. He did those things. He didn't have to be, quite frankly, but he did. So I keep coming back to these things with AI and how you would treat it, how you should use it. You should give it context, clear requirements. You should ask it what its plan is to make sure it understood your request, and then adjust it before it takes off. You should challenge it, like we talked about. Make the best argument against it, AI, and then bring the proposal, not the answer, to others outside of your group, outside of your function, and say, is there anything we missed here, from a logistical, from a TAR, from a supplier quality, from a legal, from a production facility standpoint? That's what we did before we had AI, before we had the internet. We got people around the table, and AI was one of those entities around the table to make the best decision. So that's where I keep coming back to on this piece. Is it's a new tool, it's a different tool, but to develop trust and to harness it, that's how we stay relevant. That's how we deliver value and not destroy value when we're engaging and leading our teams.
Absolutely. Team, so I see a couple of questions in the chat. I do want to bring up one question very quickly, at least before we close out. I see a very interesting question. How do you evaluate pros and cons of using AI tools like Copilot versus whole-scale agents to do such tasks, such as creating an RFP? Is the value of a third-party agent incrementally high enough to justify this investment? Any thoughts here, team?
I'll quickly take this one, Shashti, out here. So, for the pros and cons, the final goal is the outcome that you're looking at, right? If, example, you're running a spend analytics system and you are looking for opportunities to save cost, is it able to generate that cost or not? And when we back calculate this thing, it's basically how much time and effort did we spend to reach to that conclusion, and was that conclusion good enough or not? Right. That's how we generally judge what AI can actually do. We can obviously build dashboards and systems which will give you a quantified measure of all of these things. But these are the easiest way to understand whether AI is worth investment or not. From the cost aspect, definitely. As the AI would become more capable, the token consumptions, etc., will increase. The prices are going to increase. But we also need to look at, if I was able to generate an X value today, am I able to generate that value incrementally, at least incrementally, as per the ratio of what my price is going against the token consumption, etc. So if it is X today, did it move on to 10X maybe after a year or so? And that's basically how we look at. From the procurement perspective, if I was able to run RFPs within 1 month, am I able to run a sourcing event, at least the administrative aspects of the sourcing event, within a day or maybe within an hours or so, right? Solving a contract would be taking like a lot of days out there. Can I just get it done super fast? So all of these things will eventually add up. Efficiency would become a key parameter out there to make this judgment call, and taking that forward from there.
Yeah, what I would throw in there just real quick, just as a little piece to that is, hey, why not ask AI? Ask it what the best tools are. Again, that's not the answer, but that could be, some input as you're trying to decide which tool you want to use or which tool is most effective.
Absolutely. So team, this is also where I'm going to be cognizant of time. I'm going to close out the session. I'm going to let Rita add any notes or any anecdotes she may have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Saquib, Peter, and Shrusti, for engaging and such an insightful discussion. Lots to think about here. I hope everyone that attended today leaves today's session with a better understanding of how AI is transforming procurement, not just as technology, but as a practical tool that can help us work smarter, make better decisions, and create more strategic value for our organizations. On behalf of ISM Houston, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Zycus, for partnering with us to make today's session possible. And thank you all for joining and taking the time, taking time out of your busy day to join us. I encourage you to stay connected with ISM, visit our website, follow us on LinkedIn to learn about upcoming events and opportunities to engage with our supply management community. I'm going to share our upcoming program year schedule. Again, I will send a follow-up note as well so you have this information. But I just want to thank everybody for attending. We appreciate your continued support of ISM Houston, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming events. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
have a great day. Bye.